It is so good to be able to meet again. Whether you've been a member for 20 years or 20 months or 20 days, I want to thank you for everything you are doing to build our party and our movement. Our voice has never been louder, and it has never been more vital. In the last 12 months, we've seen a lot of changes for our party. We've grown, and for the first time in our history, we have become a party of government. This time last year, I wasn't a government minister. I wasn't even an MSP. I was an engineer. When I was elected, I was project manager at Orbital Marine Power, where I worked on the O2, the world's largest floating tidal turbine. The fabrication, construction, and deployment of that turbine didn't happen on its own. It was the result of the hard work and expertise of dozens of people from all over Scotland. We were brought together by one common goal. We managed it. We did something amazing. It was in the same spirit that I saw in abundance last May when we secured the highest vote in history for our party. You did that. You secured a record number of Green MSPs and took the historic decision to take us into government. The cooperation agreement that you approved was a big step forward for our party and for politics in Scotland. It may have taken us out of our comfort zones, but it put us right at the heart of big decisions. It has been 6 months since Patrick and I became ministers, and what a busy 6 months it has been. I had only been an MSP for a matter of weeks when the talks began, but when I considered the urgency of the moment, I knew that it was too important an opportunity to pass on. I was proud of the manifesto I had been elected on, and I wanted us to take the values and policies that ran through it and turn them into real, tangible actions. And that is what we have done. In my role as Minister for Green Skills, Biodiversity and Circular Economy, I am supporting our woodlands, wildlife, rivers and seas through our £65 million Nature Restoration Fund and overseeing the biggest investment in recycling for a generation. I am introducing a world-leading deposit return scheme and a ban on many of the worst and most damaging single-use plastics that pollute our oceans and litter our coasts. It is a move that the public supports with a new poll that we are publishing today showing that 75% of people support the ban. It is a ban that is being introduced by Greens in government and that will be delivered by Greens in government. We are building a more equal Scotland. Last week, we introduced a bill into the Scottish Parliament that will finally reform the Gender Recognition Act. This will allow self-identification and finally remove some of the bureaucracy and trauma from the existing system. Trans rights are human rights. I am proud that we are standing with our trans and non-binary siblings as they face one of the most reactionary campaigns of misinformation I can remember. We are working with the End Conversion Therapy campaign and parliamentarians from other parties to introduce a ban on so-called conversion therapy. Conversion therapy is abuse, and it's time to end it for good. There's far more to come. We're just getting started. We are doubling down on onshore wind capacity, introducing at least one new national park, publishing a circular economy bill, delivering rent controls, and so much more. I am very proud of the cooperation agreement that we negotiated, but it is not a blueprint for government. It is only a starting point. After the election last summer, we had a brief window in opposition. I can remember one of my first questions at First Minister's Questions. I used it to draw attention to the national disgrace of companies across Scotland destroying thousands of unsold items every week, including computer equipment, books, and even face masks. Many of these items were brand new and perfectly usable, but these companies thought it was better to destroy them than to donate them to our schools or to people who would benefit. I could see the injustice that was taking place, and I wanted to stop it. Yesterday, I was proud to announce that we are stopping this. As part of the Circular Economy Bill I will take through Parliament, we will aim to ban the destruction of unsold goods. That isn't something we could have done from the backbenches. It is the difference between being in opposition and being in government. It is the difference between calling for something to be done and being able to directly deliver it. It isn't easy. There are big challenges, but the biggest challenges don't come from the Scottish Government or even the Parliament. Many of them come from Westminster. Boris Johnson and his colleagues don't want us to succeed. Their government is the one that went to the High Court to block us from applying the UN rights of a child. Their government is one that promotes austerity and cuts while using the internal market bill to hamper, delay, and block progress. They can't be trusted to do the right thing for people or for planet. They are cutting universal credit while raising household bills and unleashing a cost of living crisis. They are taking the rug out from under people while leaving devolved governments to pick up the pieces. They talk about levelling up Britain while implementing a punishing Brexit that Scotland rejected. They are talking tough about sanctions on Russia despite being bankrolled by oligarchs. They are waving Ukrainian flags when they should be waving visa restrictions. This is not a government I want running Scotland. We can do so much better than this. We can be a democratic and independent nation that uses its influence to champion human rights. We can be a Scotland that sanctions the oligarchs and seizes their super yachts, rather than one run by a government that rolls out the red carpet to them and grovels for their donations. We can be a Scotland that works for peace, not one that arms human rights abusing regimes and dictatorships like Saudi Arabia. Right now, Saudi-led forces are using UK-made fighter jets and bombs to inflict a humanitarian catastrophe in Yemen. I want us to be a Scotland that leads on climate action. We have 25% of all offshore renewable potential in Europe, but we don't have the power to upgrade our own electricity grid to accommodate those offshore renewables. We don't have the power to lay offshore cables to export that energy. When I was working as an engineer on the orbital turbine, I worked with people from Edinburgh, Dundee, Fife, and Orkney. It wasn't just a great feat of engineering. It was a tribute to the great skills that we have here in Scotland. Just imagine the impact we could make if we made 10 of those turbines, or 100. Imagine the jobs that could be created in the busy factories and shipyards. Scotland's industry would boom, and our planet would be the beneficiary. We have the skills and technology to do things differently. We are taking big steps, but we cannot realize our full potential if we are tied to a Westminster government that is more concerned with enriching its donors than it is with tackling the climate crisis. We saw its total lack of leadership when it came to the COP conference. Boris Johnson was telling the world about the dangers of climate change while trying to increase oil exploration in Cambo. COP was branded our last best chance, but when push came to shove, far too many world leaders backed off. They took what felt like an easy option, although it will make things harder for generations to come. It is not a time for backing off. If we had walked away from the chance to help in shaping Scotland's response to the crisis, it might have been an easy option, but it wouldn't have been the right one. As Greens, we are internationalists and we will always be part of a global movement. The last 2 years have emphasized how interdependent our lives are and that none of us are safe until all of us are safe. That applies to pandemics and climate change and nuclear war. Across the world, we are seeing Greens making a difference, whether it is in New Zealand, where Green politicians are helping to build the well-being economy, or as Patrick mentioned, in Germany, where they have just achieved a record result and re-entered government. I am proud of what our movement has done, and I want us to build on it. We can build a fairer, greener and independent Scotland that stands proudly at the heart of Europe and offers safety and solidarity to refugees. We can be the Scotland of Kenmure Street, not of Downing Street. We in Scotland want to stand in solidarity with the people of Ukraine. We want to welcome those who need sanctuary into our homes, but instead, our doors have been slammed shut by the UK government that is singularly failing to step up to its humanitarian responsibilities. Every day of inaction will make a terrible situation worse. My message to Boris Johnson and Priti Patel is to stop putting paperwork and bureaucracy ahead of people's lives. Stop putting it ahead of women and children who are running terrified from the devastation of war. Let them in. No excuses, no obstacles, no delays. Let them in now. I want us to be a country that offers safety and security to people that need it. A Scotland that joins the world rather than one that abandons it. A Scotland that leads our continent as we move on from Putin and his fossil fuels. A Scotland that values people, public services, and the world around us. That's the Scotland I want to build. And it's a Scotland that we are building together. Thank you.